Hello, everybody. Welcome to Out Comes the Sun podcast and radio show. I am here with my lovely co-host and best friend, Melissa Yamaguchi, and I'm Mariel Hemingway, and I'm so glad that you have all joined us today. Melissa, we have something kind of cool to talk about.
Oh man,
We
do
were
we ever?
discussing this earlier, and I can't wait
Yeah,
to share.
listen.
Yeah.
There's a nonprofit group in America called the Green Schoolyards America. Love it already, right? And
Yeah.
I was reading that there was a senator, please forgive me, senator, out of New Mexico that introduced for New Mexico a living schoolyard concept. And so in California, it's been adopted in California. And so $150 million has been earmarked to work on the schools in the state of California. Because right now, less than 9% of the schoolyards have shade. They have no green areas, no shade. Everything is either cement or blacktop asphalt. Now, this is interesting. If it's 90 degrees outside, the rubber will be 165 degrees. And a lot of these schoolyards have rubber because it's soft and they think, oh, these little kids can bounce. But that 165-degree heat can burn these babies. And asphalt is 140 degrees when it's 90 degrees. By contrast, the grass is slight degrees above in the sun and slight degrees below the air temperature in the shade. So they're trying to introduce, and they've been trying to balance because we've had water problems, drought problems in the state of California. So there's been this constant battle like, no, we don't want to put the astroturf
Grass.
down because it gets too hot. So they're re-implementing this idea of bringing in grass, and more importantly, they've earmarked the 150,000 for the green schoolyards to be planting trees. They had this big audacious goal to plant enough trees by 2030 to provide over 35 to 40% shade to cool the air for the kids. It'll cool the air, it gives
Wow.
them an area to run. There's a little school near my home, and when I drive past it, all summer long they were doing all this major construction, and sometimes I walk by there on my morning walks, and I notice that there's a big patch of grass where the kids kind of run around. There's no shade, and then
Right.
this really big playground area that they've built with all the rubber is where they're expecting the kids to spend the majority of their time. It's still not in any shade. It has some little tarps, a few tarps, but it's really exposed.
Really exposed.
Yeah, so the big push for this is something I know this is your whole spiel also. The immune system becomes more robust and stronger against infectious agents when we spend time digging in the dirt, when we
Yes.
have regular exposure to vitamin D through the sun, and when we have regular physical exercise. That's the whole push for getting the green schoolyards for America.
Well, not to mention the kids can take their shoes off and get grounded, right? If you, or at least get their hands on the
Yes,
ground
Dan.
at some level,
Yes,
because when they're grounded, all of a sudden they've got energy. It's not only the sun. I mean, the electromagnetic field from the earth is coming up through their feet, or if their hands, or if they're crawling around or doing whatever they're doing, they are getting that immune boost. So
yes.
what they're talking about really is scientifically proven. And we know, as and we're going to have him on, Clint Ober, who is, you know started earthing.com and has all these amazing products, but it is so key. And it's what I talk about with the seven doctors and Dr. Earth, and like the fact that our kids are not getting that connection, and their childhoods are not like our childhoods
No.
were. When I was a kid, I never wore shoes in the summer. I didn't wear them. I rode my bike into town without shoes. I'd go horseback riding without shoes. I'd run into and your feet were tough as nails, and kids are not being exposed to that. So just being able to do that in a schoolyard once
Hmm.
in a while, and if they like played some games in a shaded area in the grass,
Yes.
it's hugely beneficial. But I can tell you, it's funny that you mentioned the temperature, because sometimes going on the beach, even the sand will get so incredibly hot.
Yes.
Imagine my little Daisy, who is, she's 6 pounds and she's this high. She's what? Is she a foot high? I don't know.
No, she's not a foot high.
She's like 6 inches high. I
She's a
don't know.
sneeze high.
She's a sneeze high. and she gets so hot. You can see her just like her little feet. She's just trying to get to the water because it's so hot. And those little babies with their little tender little feet, it's too much. And I love this concept. I love this concept. It makes me so happy that, we're because we have to implement the nature. Like, yes, we've got great technology, but the concrete jungle and the rubber and all that stuff, as much as it's efficient and cost effective, is it really in the end, if you're creating kids that can't move and are sluggish because they're not getting energy,
or if they're getting burned. They're
Jeez.
getting burns on their arms and legs when they're falling, and they're landing on the, even if you're playing foursquare and you're pushing, that ball gets hot.
Yeah.
So I giggled when I read about this, because it said, the immune building aspects of digging in the dirt. And I thought, every day that I'd pick my son Nobu up from school, my daughter Seiji would get in and she'd be relatively clean. She'd look similar to the way she looked when I dropped her off. I'd pick up my son. Not only did he have about 150 pounds of rocks in each pocket that he insisted I keep, and we had jars of rocks all in his bedroom because he wanted to keep all these rocks. He had names for them, who knows. But his fingernails looked like he had dug his way to China and back. And I said, no, but what's going on? Because we dug so far, we hit water. And I was like, I don't know what, the poor staff that worked there were having to constantly fill that Yamaguchi kid, and they'd like fill him in the hole, because he was just like,
he was so natural. It's natural, kids. That's what kids want. I have a friend who lives in the Palisades now, and when she was pregnant, she's great. We'll have to talk to her. She's wonderful in the space of branding and all that stuff, but very aware and very conscious of health and wellness. But anyway, when she was pregnant, she was like, I have to admit something. I go into the yard, and it's still happening, and her kids are like 16 and 14. I go into the yard and I lick the soil. I was like, what? She goes, oh, no, I'm obsessed. I have to have soil. And she still does it.
She's still out there licking soil?
She still does it. She says, I get a clean part of the, area in our backyard, and I lick soil. She said, it's like, she said, maybe it's an obsession, but I said, no, you need the minerals. I mean, what people don't realize is our earth has been so compromised by what we spray in the sky. Gosh only knows what's going on up there with, chemtrails and this and that. And then, whatever it is, even if you think that that's a conspiracy, they're really discovering now that there's a lot of stuff in our environment and our air that is really, bringing us down. But the soil is so compromised. So when there is good soil, we actually really do need the minerals of soil. And there is a mineral that Bobby and I sometimes say is called fulvic minerals, which is really a soil, is a soil. And, ion biome. Yeah. And ion biome is a soil, and it's very, very clean, but we need it. We need it, man. And and at the end of the day, we are animals,
Well, you filthy animal. Some are, really. And so there's an expression called, when you're being negative, you go, kick dirt. But now we can be positive and go, oh, lick soil. So we've got get the balance.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. Such a great conversation. Thank you, everybody. You are listening to Out Comes the Sun Radio and podcast. And we have a wonderful guest next. His name is Mark Turnipseed. We've had him on before, and he was talking about his beauty company, Halo 42, with his partner, Tim Quibb. But today, he is talking about mental health and his journey of mental health, suicide. I don't even want to tell you some of the other things that he has been through. Stay tuned, because whoa, it's quite the conversation. He kept dropping bombs, and all of us were like, wow. Yeah, so anyway, stay tuned. He is a warrior. He is an inspiration and warrior, and he's doing great things in the world because of the incredible experiences he's had. So listen up. As a mental health advocate and author, I love books. Books have the capacity to inspire, educate, transform, and ultimately help readers all over the world.
So if you want to publish your book, or if you need help writing your story, I highly recommend Mindstir Media, rated the #1 best book publisher around the country. Mindstir Media can help you no matter where you are in the book writing or publishing process. Go to mindstirmedia.com to learn more and schedule a consultation.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. You are listening to Out Comes the Sun podcast radio station with Mariel Hemingway. That's me, my partner, Melissa Yamaguchi. And we are so excited to have a guest that we've had quite recently, but he sent me his book. His name is Mark Turnipseed, and we talked to he and his partner Tim Quinn about beauty and the idea of beauty and mental health and kind of the balance that helps you to come to, you know, when you're living your life, when you're taking care of yourself, you're going to be much kinder to yourself. Well, Mark Turnipseed turns out to be a mental health professional, a best-selling author, a CEO of Halo 42, and he dedicated 5 years of his life to becoming a mental health professional in Montana. And he found himself with his own mental health struggles. I mean, you were an addict, you were a heroin addict. You're not shy about talking about that. You had your own mental health issues. For just coming out was a big issue. And I can imagine being in the West, you know, in the Western states, because I come from Idaho, so I'm from that part of the world. It's a little more challenging. It's not like living in Los Angeles, New York, or even in Florida, right? You're in a different environment. So I'm sure that there were struggles there. So I'm just so happy to have you back to really talk about this very important issue. And for somebody who's been through it, who really knows the struggle it must be to deal with those mental health issues, but having overcome them. And also, can we just talk about your physical transformation? I mean, I know I'm bringing up a lot of things, so you're going to have to go through the list. I hope you can remember, because I won't. Maybe Melissa will. But you had a physical transformation that's quite extraordinary. If you look on Mark Turnipseed's Instagram, he shows a before and after picture, and you don't even look like the same human. I was like, huh? Is that you?
I'll confess, I looked longer than I should have.
I look longer than I should occasionally as well, because honestly, it's really quite profound what can happen to an individual once, you know, the momentum starts to go in a different direction. You know, I think for such a long time of my life, my momentum was moving in the direction of the negative pull of my mental health issues, correct? But here, there was a number of things, of course, that you touched on that I would love to just dive straight into.
Please.
Go.
You know, I think one of the first things that pops into mind is the thought of mental health issues. Like, where did the mental health issues come from? You know, I mean, surely they didn't just arrive out of my homosexuality and my closetedness, you know, or did they? Like, you know, we have to kind of consider that. We have to kind of wrestle with that. And if we do wrestle with that and we do look and we say, oh, wait, is really some of these homosexual or is really some of these mental health tendencies that this boy had as a teenager that was causing him to do things like trying to burn down a school with the people inside? Are these the types of things that we are creating out of the ignorance that we have towards a community of people or a proclivity of a certain type of individual? Are we really going to, you know, put a stigma around them that causes them to end up inflicting pain on the children and community that we have because they're psycho? Like, you know, we're self-perpetuating, and otherwise what I'm saying is that out of our own fear, we self-perpetuate trauma. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, whether that be a homosexual individual or an individual who's just born up, raised differently inside of a community, right? That happens a lot in the South where I grew up. You could be Black, you could be gay, you could be Jewish, you know, any of those things is going to put you at serious odds. And then ultimately, you know, mental health issues are much more likely to rise for you. Now, my book, my story basically shows that there's a way out, right? That we don't have to stay stuck in whatever it is that we get stuck in. Even if you're stuck in that for a very long time, like I was stuck under that trauma of reliving that trauma for myself, also sending that trauma out to other people that would then perpetuate it back to me. And so ultimately breaking all those chains would take a number of years for me. But it took a number of years to build, right?
Right.
So
how long did it take you? And when did you leave Montana?
Yeah, I left Montana about 6 years ago.
Not that long ago.
Yeah, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and I spent a good portion of my life in South Georgia, a little place called Sea Island. And then I was moved out to Montana when I was 15 for troubled youth care. And when I was in those boarding schools, that's actually when I tried to burn down one of the buildings.
Yeah.
And so I was very antisocial. I was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. I had severe anxiety, social agoraphobia, depression, manic depression. And then, of course, as we would start to understand that, bipolar and so basically all of the different types of mental health issues, I kind of bounced around in them. I mean, it's crazy how I would be seeing one counselor, then I'd bounce around, get on a new medication, go under new treatment. And I kept finding these things. It made me very fascinated in mental health, though. I mean, from about 6 years old, I was in therapy, right? And I remember just being so fascinated by it. I remember just being like, this is the coolest process. So in a sense, you know, it kind of helped me because that's what I went to school for.
Wow.
I have a question.
Right.
There, you know, you brought up something about the cyclical, right? And it just like coming back and forth. So at some point, we have to get off the chicken or the egg mentality. Like, it doesn't really matter what came first at some point.
Yes.
And so I understand the need for someone who's going through something to kind of say, how did this begin? And certainly therapists want to know, was it your parenting? Was it this, whatever? They try to dissect it.
Yes.
I'm so intrigued. Your entire story's, I'm enraptured right now, but I'm incredibly intrigued by a lifetime of pain. And it could be generational trauma that you're carrying forward. Who knows? I don't know. But at this point, at some point, you got to a place, Mark, where you said, I can't and I won't do this anymore.
Yes.
And I'm so intrigued because you've only been out of Montana for 6 years. You've made such an overwhelmingly amazing transformation. What was the precipice? What knocked you over to where you're like, I can't and won't do this anymore? I need a change.
Yeah, well, it's all about changing what you're saying and changing the dialogue that's going on inside. And so you're very correct. I actually very much so talk about it extensively, that it really doesn't matter whether my gay called my mental health issues or my mental health issues called my gayness. It really doesn't matter. It also doesn't really matter if I became gay because I was molested. You know, none of that stuff actually matters whatsoever, except for the fact that when you do have that dialogue with yourself,
yes,
then you're going to be able to take power back when you find the truth.
Yep.
Yes.
So it's all about the disabuse. That's the only reason why you ever have that conversation.
Yeah.
And the only reason why you should ever really have that conversation is not with anybody else. Maybe a counselor, maybe with a very trusted friend, somebody who's helping you come out of the closet.
Yeah.
But it really doesn't matter except for the dialogue that you're having with yourself. Because once you start to change, once you start to realize, oh, wait, the reason why I feel so much guilt and shame is because I've been telling myself the same things that people around me are telling me that I'm supposed to be. And every time they tell me that, it makes me feel icky. Like, why am I trying to be what feels icky to me? And so I changed the dialogue. And honestly, once you change the dialogue, so it took me many, many years to realize it's kind of just a dialogue shift.
Right.
But it took a long time. And then once I realized that, though, it came very quickly. And the reason why it came very quickly for me, and the reason why once I learned that it was a dialogue shift, is through triathlon. So I had been trying to, like, right out of recovery of heroin addiction was 9 years ago, 10 years ago now. Okay, so right when I got out of heroin addiction, I tried everything. For the past 10 years, I've been trying everything I can to just feel at peace, not to get sober, to feel at peace, right? Nothing was working. Sobriety wasn't working. I got sober. I got sober for 2 years and it was miserable. I ended up in absolute hell, depressed. I ended up suicidal. That's when I ended up trying to kill myself 2 times, and or 3 times in 1 week, right? Because still inside of that program, what I was doing is I was trying to become what I believed everybody in that program wanted me to become. I wasn't changing the dialogue within. So I was living this more, I was still living a dualistic life, which is what the AA principles were, well, the AA structure was kind of leading me into. Another fear-based, like, I don't want to be that person, I'm this person, and I'm that person. So now I've got to hate a part of me. And it's just kind of like, wait a second, why do we do that to ourselves?
Can I interrupt to ask one question? Was there a person that helped you to understand the inner dialogue, or did this just come to you because of doing triathlons, going to different programs, trying to be sober, trying to be this, trying to be that? Like, did you discover this on your own? Or was there somebody that came along and was kind of like turned the lights on and went, oh?
Yeah, I would like to say that it was on my own. I can't say that there was somebody who came and actually told me that. You know, I believe that it was a huge series of revelations that occurred over a lifetime, and that came as a life vest right when I needed it, when I was about to drown. And I will go ahead and tell everybody out there that I firmly believe that when you absolutely need it, if you need one little bit of wisdom, you can find it. It is there. And that's where my second book actually came from. So very early on in my whole process, I began praying, and I would go, God, just give me one string of words, one mantra that I can live by today that gives me a little bit more hope, like a little bit of a change of perspective. And one would come. I would kind of search out for it all day long. That was my sole purpose, was to find one thing to live for. That was one of the changes of dialogue, was instead of trying to find one thing that's going to help pull me out of this life, I'm going to try to find one thing that helps to pull me into this life, just to change the conversation, right? So I started to find these little itty bitty things,
Well, it is so interesting because we create neural pathways by the thoughts that we keep thinking and rethinking and thinking again and thinking again. And well, we don't create those neural pathways, are embedded in us from childhood, right? So it's a challenge to change that inner thinking, because it's so like deeply rooted. But what you did is very courageous, and it takes dedication, because Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about how we repeat patterns, but you can create new patterns just by creating a mantra, like you did. Like you found every day, you find that thing, whether whoever, brought that to your attention. But it's so smart, and it's empowering, and it's inspiring, because you inspire people to know that they can do this, right?
Yeah. And here's the thing, is you can gain mastery over it, right? So you're speaking of these neural pathways. Well, the only way a neural pathway speaks to another, right? Our dendrites and our axioms, the only way that they actually make that connection is an electrical charge through chemicals that are going through it, correct?
Yeah.
We have control over those. We have control over our chemicals. I can very easily, so triathlon spoke louder to me than anything has ever spoken to me, because what it does is it Is it inside? Is it forces me to look within? It forces me to look within. And inside of each of us is the secret of the universe. The code is written inside of our DNA. If we dive deep within, we are going to find the answer. It's just going to happen. And the thing that was happening to me that I believe during triathlon was I would go through these spells and this state where I could not go 1 second further. I cannot go 1 second further. And I felt that so many times in my life, almost my entire life. I felt I cannot just go. I remember I tried to commit suicide at 6 years old. I've always felt I cannot just go. But here's the thing, what triathlon did is when I got that feeling, I remember very, very early on in this thing, I had no idea what I was doing, but I couldn't afford anything. I didn't even have headphones, right? And I was on this bike in my gym, and I was just, I started to hurt in my leg. It hurt so bad. And I was like so unfamiliar with this type of pain. And the cycling instructor had said one time, he goes, when you start to feel pain, it's not unique to you. Everybody feels this sort of pain. And here's something really curious that happened as I dove into that pain. So I put my head straight into my thigh where it was hurting. And instead of becoming like isolated in my pain, I recognized that I was part of this human state almost. And then all of a sudden I had a sense of power of the collective, right? That even professional athletes feel pain. And then all of a sudden I became something bigger than me. I became something bigger than my challenges because everyone else has them as well. And there is the access point, I believe, of compassion.
Oh my God, I love what you're saying, because I'm such a big believer, and Melissa knows that I chant this, that, the physical body is not disconnected from the head. So these things, that physical body was teaching you through this pain, but the collective pain, oh, wow. That's very exciting stuff to hear, because I truly believe that we can get through things by connecting our physical, how we're doing our life. I'm not necessarily going to go out and put myself in pain, although I did that for years. I understand that, a kind of an obsessive thing. And it also distracts you from the mental pain, right? The physical pain can distract you, but it also can bring you closer to what the mental pain is really about. Like, is this really about me, or is this really about something bigger? And really, am I in pain? Right?
That's the key.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's the key. That's the key. That's absolutely the key. People talk very much so. They go, you started doing triathlon, now you just traded addictions. And I go, no, because my whole dialogue has changed. When I go through these challenges, y'all, when I used to go through challenges, I used to run away from them. Now, when I go through these challenges, I internalize them and I dive deeper into them and I begin to understand them. And I begin to understand how this challenge was causing this type of behavior, and how now I can actually go into my chemical and interrupt it, and I can keep freaking running when everything inside of me tells me that I should stop. In the same exact way as I can stay kind when every other person in the traffic is going absolutely insane, I can get in between my chemicals and I can change now.
Wow.
Everyone can. None of us have to go into that flow. None of us have to get stuck in the negative anger, in the flow, in the mental health miasma that sits underneath, right? We don't have to be there. We can be above. We can be above in what I call the beautiful stream of life instead of the undertow.
Mark, if someone's, to our listeners, someone who's doesn't know how to get into the flow, and that familiar voice that's saying all the stuff that you're saying, that you're like, everything's telling you this and you're pushing past, how does someone get to that point? Because I don't want to single you out as a miracle, but I'm listening to you and your ability sans a big support network, sans you've done this pushed so hard yourself. You had some internal fire that's really allowed you to push forward and hear messages that were being given to you by people around you. Hear a cycling instructor say, this pain is not unique to you. Other people could be in the class and would have never heard that. You have opened your mind to messages. And so my question is, because I love when our audience gets something they can take, and there's a lot you've given. But if I'm someone who has a hard time canceling out the voices from my past of my parents or teachers or coaches or friends or whoever it is, if I have a hard time getting past that and pushing past all the no's, how do I get to that? What do you do? Do you have I know you said you seek a mantra, like to help you find that lock, but do you tell yourself something to get through it, when the no's start to creep in? What do you do?
No, I don't fight it. Like, fighting it's definitely not what you do. I let go. So I've always found that. So after my third suicide attempt, I went to the gym, and I was so nervous to go back home to my ex-wife, because I had just tried to kill her actually the night before, and myself at the same time. And I was so ashamed I couldn't go back. So I went to the gym. And when I was at the gym, I didn't want to go to the weight room because I was going to see a whole bunch of people, and I didn't really feel comfortable being around anybody. So I went to the pool. And I jumped into the pool. And I remember falling into the pool and just being like, wow, that was actually rather easy. I just kind of fell. And then I go, I'm going to try to swim to the other side. And I started swimming to the other side, and I could barely even make it. I thought that I was going to drown. And then there was some sort of thought. There was some thought that came into my head that was like, turn around and go back the other side. I was like, I can't even breathe. Turn around, go back the other side. Do it anyway. So I did it, and I started swimming back the other side. And here's the curious thing that happened is that what I'm doing there is I'm actually starting to live in between. I'm starting to live in the magic that's in between breath, right? I'm starting to live in between the magic that is action and non-action. This is what I believe is in the spirit realm, and it can compel us to pull forwards. Mm-hmm. It's always dragging us and pulling us forwards if we can tap into that. And the way that we tap into that is actually letting go of every single negative thought that's coming in, and letting go of every single positive thought that's coming in. Because I'll tell you one thing, when you're running, when you're at the very wit's end and you're at that 26th mile, and you try to hold on to the thought that is going to get you to 26.2 running after you've already done a full triathlon, if you try to hold on to that thought, that little bit of energy holding on to that thought is going to be the thing that holds you back from your next step. So you have to just let it go. You have to become really good at letting go. So what I tell people is that when I got out of that pool, I recognized that I was really good at giving up. I was really good at giving up, and I needed to give up my will. Because what I was trying to do inside of my will was control everybody, right? And to control everything. Now, if I just let go of that all, then I could just exist between it all. And in there, it's free. You're free. You're not trying to control, and you're not affected by the things of other people trying to control you. So to tap into that is very simple. Instead of trying to become motivated, just fall into it. Just fall into it. I mean, I love Nike has it right. Like, just do it. You just fall into it. There's just no resistance. That's kind of what I'm getting at, is stop the resistance, stop the attachments, stop the negative thoughts, and stop trying to pump yourself up. Just live.
Do you have to say let go to yourself? Because I know that our audience is probably going, okay, I hear him say let go, but what is that? How do you do that? I mean, oftentimes there's a fear of like, I don't know how to do that. How do I do that? Right?
Let's practice that. If anybody has a smartwatch on your wrist, I want you to do this with me. And being inside of the gym is a wonderful thing too, because when you inhale, you're not letting go, right? You're pulling it all in, right? Well, actually, that's increasing your heart rate and increasing your energy, and everything inside of you is buzzing. And then watch your heart as you slowly let go. watch that heart rate slowly, and it will go all the way down, man. That heart rate can go all the way down. That is you letting go. So learn that feeling, become comfortable with that. Start to apply that in every situation, right? And then when you start to understand the physical, when you start to feel how it can physically actually happen, what happens to me now is that if I'm eating and I start getting in chaos, or if I'm on a podcast and I start getting in chaos, what I do is I visualize every cell inside of my body, and then I pause it all and I let it just drop. And it drops with my breath. But it's because I practice that on a daily basis. Whenever if I'm in a triathlon training episode, right, my heart rate's getting too high, I go back to my breath, and I don't go back to the I go back to the release. I go back to the release. The release is where I'm clearing all of the carbon dioxide. It's where I'm pushing everything out. It's where I'm getting the magic of life, y'all. Sleep, the rest, the night, the relaxation. That's where we are restoring ourselves, right? And so basically what I'm talking about here is learning how to adjust the energetic drives within your being, right?
Oh my gosh. It's cool. Thank you for that, because I think people do need to like have a thing. Like Melissa said, we love to give people something to do, because people need actionable items, right? They need to know, oh, I can do that. I can breathe, because we all have to breathe. We all have to inhale. We all have to exhale. And it is about like learning how to realize that the inhale is taking it in and the exhale is literally letting it go, right? And yoga, your exhales are always longer than your inhales, right? You want that to be, and sometimes I will hold my breath out just to be in that empty space, right? Thank you for this. This is so powerful.
That's the space
between. It really is.
Mariel, that space between, that is the magic, right? And so and that's a step up. So learning how to rest inside of the space before you start breathing again is another aspect. Now, if we take that into the emotional realm and the psychological realm, our power becomes transformative. Right? Because the space between helps us to abstain from the things that we're craving to eat, that we don't need. That is the thing that goes, I'm satisfied with how much I've eaten. I don't need to take another bite, because I'm resting in the state between. I'm going to let my body now start to digest this food. And then I'm going to be content until my next meal. It's the same thing with sex. It's the same things with drugs. It's the same thing with anything that creates that chemical, chaos inside of us. There's a space between where we can master it.
Yeah, where you don't have to buy into the like wanting more. Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating. Melissa.
Listen, I'm just sitting here trying to imagine what I'm going to do, and I can just see myself falling into stuff. I like this whole concept of just getting quiet, and that space between is fascinating to me. What is on the horizon for you, Mark? I know you have your podcast coming, but because your information needs to be heard by many. Yes. So what is on your horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I pray and I visualize a lot, so I dream of my book becoming a international bestseller, being in multiple different languages, because the overcoming that I've had thoughts of suicide my entire life, right? And I'm not the only one. No. But for some reason I've never heard that before I shared that in my book, and then thousands of people are telling me they're not the only one. So people need to not feel alone, and my greatest desire is to see that this helps other individuals. I'm so excited about that. My podcast, I'm also very excited about. I have no idea where it's going to go. It's called Empire Self. And so I'm going to be talking about building up the empire to be a beacon of light and joy for the rest of the world, right? And for yourself. I'm also working on Halo 42, which is the skincare line, which I developed with Tim Quinn, who was basically my first full-blown client, where he came in for health and wellness and life coaching and ended up with a brand. So now I'm going to start doing that with other individuals, other guys who want to overcome enter in the next phase of their life and develop something that they're passionate about. And I believe that inside of that is the change of dialogue, you know, being like, I have to live this sort of way. I have to live under this corporate or this, like, you know, manifesto or something. Like Tim was with Armani, and he had to be this like face of Armani. It was like he never got to put on his own, you know. So it's so very exciting because I got to come out of my own illusion and step into myself, and you can see the before and after pictures. That was huge, right? But I get to see other people with more subtle but yet just as beautiful transformations when they walk into their true selves, and that's my passion. I just love seeing that. So that's where
that is incredible. Mark, you're just a wealth of information and inspiration. I mean, I think, gosh, I know for myself, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about how you've transformed your life, because a lot of people have stories that are dark or depressing or whatever it is. And you've really, I mean, like, wow, have you turned that around? And that's huge. And knowing that you have pieces of a solution, because I always think that, you know, our mental health is a daily journey. It's finding that, you know, I wrote a book called Finding My Balance. It's every day. You're finding your balance every day. It's not like, oh, well, today I'm perfect and then forever, the rest of my life, amen. But, you know, it doesn't work like that, right?
One and done. Yeah.
One and done. But you're amazing, Mark. We're going to have you back again, I think.
That's fine with me.
This is a wonderful conversation, an important one for everybody listening to share with others. And I hope that you share this conversation with, you know, people that, you know, have suffered in this way. I mean, I think so many people suffer and don't even talk about it, you know, and I think that understanding is great. So thank you so much for coming on again. We're so grateful to you, Mark.
It was my absolute pleasure.
Awesome. Everybody stay where you are, because you know what? Melissa Yamaguchi is going to have an energy tip for us.
Come on back.
Come on back.
That was awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
So mind blowing. Like, so you were married too? I almost got into that and I thought, oh dear, we'll be on.
Yeah, that was good. That was you almost segued into that too. When you said one and done, I was like, actually, that's kind of interesting, because I could go on about that, because I mean, I got sober, and then I ended up coming out of the closet 2 years into sobriety, because I got to this point where I was like, you know what, if I don't come out, then I'm going and stay married with this woman, then I'm just going to start drinking. And where that was leading me at that point was just straight back to thoughts of suicide. Right when I would take a sip of alcohol, or right when my head would get any sort of messed up, suicide. It was so weird.
Your spirit was screaming for you to find yourself. Your spirit's just been screaming, and it was like it's so clear. I'm on the edge of the forest, right? I'm not in there looking, and I'm just seeing your spirit just going, hey, get out. And you finally heard it, and it's just brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Inspirational.
You're a life force. You really are a life force. There's a lot more to share and learn.
Melissa, I see that in everybody now. I see that very same thing. When I walk around, I can see inside of them this thing that's like, let me out. And that's what I want to help. Like, I'm like, look, all we got to do, let me spend 5 minutes with you real fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the word namaste is strong. The light in me, if the light in me, give me 5 minutes for the light in me to connect with the light in you. And that may be all you need.
You know, I believe in this, and I've told Mariel this story, and it's not something you tell on a first date that we're having here, Mark, but we're all friends. When I was a little girl, I grew up in Oklahoma. My grandmother, Mariel knows this story. She's heard it. She's gonna get here many more times in our friendship. When I was a little girl, I've always had a very loud, raucous laugh. I don't have a little behind the glove giggle. If it's funny, I'm laughing. And my maternal grandmother, told me at one point, darling, you can't laugh like that. Ladies don't laugh like that. And I said, what am I supposed to do? And she said, you hold that laughter in, and you and I said, if I hold it in, I'm going to fart. I think I was like 3 when I said that. And so my whole life, it's like, don't hold back who you are. Let it out. Just go. Yeah. If you hold it back, you're going to fart. Yeah.
Or you're gonna have to
The
put it with
wisdom
my
of a 3-year-old.
stink. If I hold it back, you're gonna have to put it with my stink.
So good, Mark. Wow, just so inspiring. Anyway, the cool beans. I'm gonna get in touch with you about something that Melissa and I are gonna talk about and all of that.
Yeah, of
Right,
course.
unique.
I'm always open
Cool.
to collaborating and more conversations.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank
Sounds
you.
great.
Thank you. So
Thank
good.
you.
This is John Sane, global expert at Singularity, faculty at Duke, 5 times best-selling author, and futurist who combines future studies and neuroscience to try and help organizations and humans prepare for the future. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the future of hope. How do we think about hope in brand new ways? How do we cultivate courage in 5 new ways? How to be more courageous in a world of total uncertainty where hope was always predicated on some level of certainty. Looking forward to seeing you on the pod Out Comes the Sun with Mariel Hemingway and Melissa Yamaguchi.
Welcome back to Out Comes the Sun radio podcast. I'm Melissa Yamaguchi with Mariel Hemingway, and I'm here to share with you some feng shui tips for fall. It's a time when we transition from one season to the next, and in energy, we always are very mindful of the temperatures, of the colors of the foods and fruits and vegetables that you should be eating and consuming, and colors that you should be wearing and so forth, and even behaviors of people around you. So the months of June, July, and August are known as fire energy because it's usually the hottest times. For us, it's how you're transitioning in, it's fire energy. We're now moving into fall, which is more of a metal energy. Now, in the concept of understanding metal energy, metal is a time for organization, for planning, for structure, for kind of tightening up on your values and what matters to you and bringing things in. Well, if you think about it, people who grew up on the farm will understand what I'm talking about. I remember every fall seasons when my grandmothers were canning. So they were collecting things and canning it away for the winters that were going to be coming, and they were going, all these canned items are going into the basement for preservation. So it's the preparation and planning. So with the feng shui transition into fall and this concept of energy, after moving away from that and understanding the energy, there are different tips I'd like to share with you to get your home and yourself mentally prepared and ready for this transition of fall. The first is to clear clutter. I say that with every single tip. That is the one recurring tip consistently, is clear clutter. Get the extra stuff away from you so that you can walk smoothly, so that you can transition from one room to the next without bumping into something or something falling and knocking over on you. You can consider, if you have the means to or the desire to change some of the colors. Bringing in a little bit of a warmer color into your decor is really cool. If you want to do it with flowers you have from your garden, or you want to bring in plants or flowers, that's always great. But if you have a throw or a little accent pillow you want to bring in, a little rug that you want, an area rug, it's nice too. The colors that we promote: yellow, tans, browns, and oranges. And if you like the red, make it more of a deeper burgundy red than a bright, vibrant red. So these kind of rich, warm, and deep greens, deep greens, deep burgundies, yellows, tans, oranges, and browns. Very healthy, beautiful fall colors to bring into your home to get you acclimated and ready for the area, for the time. Allow nature in, especially because as our days shorten, we need to bring sunlight in when we can to fill the darker corners of your home, to keep it light, to keep you mentally prepared. If your home is dark and dank, then you cannot think and function. You cannot prepare. You cannot have an organized mind, because it can bring in depression. So make sure you let in some sunlight. Turn on lights in areas of your home that get very dark very quickly. Leave it on a little bit. Get the LED light bulb so you're not wasting as much energy and producing more fossil fuels, but just bring in that light into your home. And also, like I said, plants and colors of flowers are really good for that also. Pay attention to your finances, your budgets, your goals, your calendars, finished projects. This season, transitioning into fall. Think about how much sense this makes in feng shui. The summertime is when the kids are out and we're vacationing, and it's popsicles and ice cream and watermelon, and everyone's having a blast, and things are all kind of just, celebrations and all that. We're now moving into school. We've got to have the homework backpacks ready. We've got to have the kids ready for school. We've got to take care and get everything organized in the home, get their school clothes ready. This is really a time when you yourself need to start getting everything incredibly in order. Now, if you say, oh, Melissa, I've always had things in order. I keep things in order. I don't let summer allow me to slide. Well, good for you. The majority of people do not. But even if you do, then start your preparation for the impending holidays that are coming at the end of the year during the winter season, when we've got a lot of celebrations that are going to be taking place, and you may want to start putting aside a finance for a little budget for the teachers a year of the end, a gift, or whatever you're doing. But get everything in order: budgets, goals, calendars, finances, and finish projects. Also, with your food, bring in warm colored foods, and think about the colors that I said to introduce to the home. You've got yellows, tans, browns, oranges, deep burgundies. Bring in the root vegetables, the beets, and even those orange or the red beets. I love them so much. Bring in deep root colored vegetables, bring in the carrots, bring in the squash, bring in everything into your diet. When it's warm, it pleases the spirit, it pleases the body. It keeps your body in balance with the way the temperatures are changing, the way the life around you is changing. The hurried pace of back to school, the hurried pace of, even if your children are out of the home and you don't, or even if you don't have children, the energy around is still moving. We see people moving at a more harried pace in the daytime because everyone's now back on the road taking kids to school plus getting to work. So you've got to prepare your body with that for warm foods by calming your spirit down so that you can keep up with that hurried pace. September month is a time to be mindful of your words, as they can cut when you didn't expect for them to. We're moving into the month of Rooster, and Rooster energy can be very cutting, especially when it feels cornered. So you have to be very mindful of the words that are coming out of your mouth, so that when you're speaking to people, that your words land as your heart intends, not as they're just flying out. So be very mindful. Being selective about to whom you are vulnerable is really important. But don't let old blockages take over. So be mindful about to whom you are vulnerable, but do not allow old resistance to stand in front of your ability to grow. That's an interesting balance, right? I'm asking you to not be too open, but I'm asking you to not be so closed that you don't grow. Find that space in between, and that will help carry you forward in this fall transition. Now, don't go anywhere. Stay right where you are. Coming up next is Mariel Hemingway to share with you some of her brilliance when it comes to health and balance.
Thank you so much. Yes, I am Mariel Hemingway. You're listening to Outcomes the Sun podcast. And I'm going to talk about cold plunge because why not? Because I'm kind of obsessed. We're all obsessed over here about cold plunge and really kind of what it means. So I'm going to talk about why cold plunges are so beneficial. And I'm going to tell you a little story first about growing up in Idaho. Idaho's this amazing place, and summers have always been incredibly important to me. Just I think because I had such a kind of unstable home, even though I loved my family, but there was some instability. There was a lot of alcohol. There was a lot of, yelling, whatever. And nature was my way of kind of staying grounded, staying present. And cold plunges, even when I was very, very young, it was just something I did. I jumped into rivers, I jumped into lakes, and I would do it almost up to Christmas, almost. I remember breaking the ice once and getting into a very cold river, and I thought, okay, it's time to stop for the year. But and what I realized in retrospect, in looking back, is that helped me to, it helped my mood, because it does elevate your mood. There's no question about it. It creates it activates dopamine in the body, and that's the feel good drug that we make. And cold plunging does that. It elevates your energy. So when you cold plunge, you get a burst of energy. Water has that effect because there's energetics in water that create that. But the cold temperature just activates all the cells in your body, creating more energy. If you are a avid person working out, when you take a cold plunge, it's very helpful for recovery. It's helpful for the muscles. actually discovering that warm and cold benefit the muscles and recovery of your muscles and your joints in many ways. So it's not just cold anymore. It's not just ice it. Now it's kind of warm and cold. But the benefit of cold plunging, I mean, I always know, because I had a hip issue for a few years that I am just now coming to resolve with. But cold plunging really does help me to, it helped me to alleviate that pain over the years. And it boosts your immune system. Now, I have to tell you, with anything that you do that is sort of extreme, and cold plunging can be extreme, you have to think about you. Like, how does your body function best? Now, what I've discovered lately is that when I'm cold plunging, when I cold plunge too deep for too long, let's say 5 minutes, like I'll time it, but it's super cold and it's over my lungs, over my chest, literally my neck down, I noticed that my lungs kind of suffer. Now I have I don't have the best lung capacity, although my significant other's machine, which we'll talk about that one day, that pressurizes you at different altitudes, has helped that tremendously. But that cold, and I think this is in keeping with kind of the Chinese philosophy of keeping that area warm. So for me, sometimes doing a cold plunge to my neck for too long can actually cause me to cough and have issues with my lungs. So just know your body, and also know this. Cold plunges are very, you'll see Joe Rogan stepping into a bath of icy, like literally ice, and he's breaking into the ice to get into the cold plunge of, 32 degrees or something. It's not necessary to be in water that cold. You can actually stay in water Andrew Huberman does a wonderful podcast on temperature and, saunas and temperature and cold plunge and what have you. And within his research and the research that many people have done, it's actually 67 degrees or below. It doesn't have to be that cold. So if you're one of those people who's like, I can't do that ice thing, well, guess what? You don't have to. So cool. It can be just cool enough that brings the body temperature down and still have this amazing effect on the body. But if you want to be a badass and a hard ass and a, whatever, a superhero, you can go into the ice plunge. So it does increase dopamine. So it's a molecule in our brain and body that is linked to motivation. So the reason why we feel so good afterwards is like this dopamine surge is creating this ability to want to do more, to get out there. I did an incredibly long hike this morning, and I'm not gonna lie, I was feeling I was feeling a little bit tired afterwards, right? I got in the cold plunge, and it was like everything turned around, and I didn't stay in very long, but I had energy, and it was almost like this instant recovery. And I'm sure it has a dopamine surge, and it also helps you to focus. I love what cold plunging does. I love what it represents to me. Ultimately it's about connecting in nature. When I'm fortunate enough to be able to do a cold plunge out in a river or a lake, wow, that's a benefit for me. But in the middle of winter, if I'm in Idaho, I just fill the bathtub. Our water's really cold here, and I get in the cold plunge that way. It's really up to you how you do it and the length that you do it. But it doesn't have to be as extreme as we've heard, or we see some of the celebrities doing it with challenges and all that stuff. Really read your own body. I mean, Melissa and I are so much about, there's not one size fits all to anything that we do. So we have to listen to ourselves. How do I function best? Because now I know, like, I just don't immerse my chest area right above my lungs for very long because I know it doesn't benefit me. That's how I work. And you need to discover what works for you, because that's the benefit of any kind of health advice is like, look, you are an individual. You know how you are. You know how you function in the world. So approach any kind of activity that you do, whether it's exercise, cold plunging, drinking your water. You'll start to discover the best way, the best recipe for you. And it's very specific to you. So that's my tip.
I love it. I don't do enough of it. I do cold showers, but I'm afraid Billy and I've talked about getting a plunge, and I'm a little bit, I get a little bit like goosey when I start thinking about it, because I know that
I'm not gonna lie, it's intense. When I first come up here in the summer, and I've been cold plunging in the bathtub, with cool water, when I come up here and I get in the river, it's cold. It is so cold, especially at the beginning of summer. It's cold.
I'm intrigued when you said that your hip is feeling better, because a lot of people stay away from cold or heat because of their joint issues. So I think it was I love that you brought that up.
Well, I think what it does, it constricts those cells. Now, if you're here's what we know, like sometimes when you have an injury and that injury is new, you don't want to immediately put cold on it, because the inflammation is actually the body's way of protecting the area so the cells can go to work,
right,
to get busy healing, right? So that's when you want to do warm, keep that thing going, and doing the hot cold thing seems to be more of a thing. Now, my hip issue, since it was going on for so long, it wasn't like an injury that just happened.
Right.
So the cold was this way of like activating those cells around that. And I imagine getting that tissue to respond, the tissue, the joints.
Love it.
I don't know. It works for me. And that's, again, it's like, man, it's so individual.
Yes.
Get the cold plunge, because I'm coming over.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Billy keeps talking about it, and I've got to stop with this little into the cold shower, like I'm doing you put your right foot in, you put your right foot out. I'm doing the hokey pokey into the shower. I got to go full floors. I got to be so chicken.
Do it. Oh my gosh, what a good show. Thank you, Mark Turnipseed. We enjoyed talking to you. We're still kind of sitting there going, wow.
Yeah,
I'm reeling, my man. I'm reeling.
He's got to come back. He's got to come back.
He's got to come back. He's got more stories to tell.
He's got more.
He wrote to me. He was like, I wanted to ask you about you guys' stories. He was like, it's okay.
No, next time he comes, I'm wearing a football helmet for all the stuff he drops.
Oh my gosh. He has, like I've got his feed on my Instagram. And then this morning, I looked at it after I meditated, and he's like, is this your morning out? This is my morning outfit. And it was like a full biker thing. I was like, well, that's not quite my morning outfit, but okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he is gone. He has turned himself into an athlete. And boy, if you look at his before and after picture, you'll be like,
it's overwhelming.
Oh my goodness.
I sent it to my 85-year-old mother. She asked me to clear it up and send it again. She said, it's a little fuzzy. Can you resend it? I said, it's not fuzzy. Put on your glasses and quit being so salacious. If you could just clean it up a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you, everyone. We enjoy you so much. Thank you again for listening to Out Comes the Sun. Again, I will remind you that we do use a little bit of what we're doing here to help promote and kind of take care of the Mariel Hemingway Foundation.org, which Melissa and I put together as a resource navigator, which just means we simply want to help you no matter where you are in this country, and hopefully eventually where you are in the world, finding your solution to your mental health issues, if you have any at all, and where you can go to find the kind of help that you need, because we believe that there is recovery for everyone with mental health issues. So That's my spiel. That's what I got for you all today. And thank you all so much. And thank you, Slater, for your wonderful dedication to this podcast. We are always grateful to you.